Wake up. Stop pretending. It was just a little slap. The woman's voice, sharp and loud, sliced through the tranquil afternoon air. On a perfectly manicured lawn, an 8-year-old girl lay motionless, her small body crumpled like a discarded doll. Paramedics moved with urgent precision, their presence a stark intrusion on the suburban peace. Beneath the child's head, blood pooled, staining the emerald grass a deep crimson. The summer sun beat down without mercy, but the girl did not stir, did not blink, did not cry. 10 feet away, a well-dressed woman stood frozen, her hands trembling at her sides. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. She stared at the small, still form on the grass, her face a mask of pure, undiluted horror. It was not a horror for the child, but for herself, for what was about to happen to her. 3 black SUVs screeched to an abrupt halt at the curb, their doors flying open before the engines were cut. Men in dark suits emerged, their faces grim and professional as they took in the scene, their hands already reaching for their radios. And then she appeared. Mayor Patricia Williams, the city's first black female mayor, a woman renowned for her composure, her sharp intellect, and her unwavering commitment to justice. She wore a navy blazer and pearls, clearly pulled from an official engagement, but the moment her feet hit the pavement, the moment her eyes locked onto the small, motionless body on the lawn, everything changed. Her professional mask shattered. A raw, primal rage flooded her features, mingled with the terror of a mother's worst nightmare. She ran, heels forgotten, dignity abandoned, a mother racing toward her unconscious child. The white woman took a stumbling step backward, then another. The color drained from her face. She shook her head slowly, as if she could rewind time, as if she could undo the truth that was about to be laid bare for all to see. A neighbor, phone still clutched in the hand that had dialed 911, whispered to the person beside her, her voice carried in the terrible silence that had fallen over the street. "Oh my God, that's the mayor." As police cruisers arrived, their lights flashing silently, officers began to move toward the white woman. She knew what was coming. Because she had just tormented a child until she lost consciousness. And that child's mother wasn't just any mother, she was the most powerful woman in the city. How did it come to this? How did a grown woman end up attacking an 8-year-old child with such viciousness? What kind of hatred could drive a person to harm a little girl whose only crime was moving into the wrong neighborhood? It all began 3 weeks earlier. Riverside Heights awoke to a beautiful Saturday morning. It was a neighborhood of golf course lawns and 2-car garages, a place where the Homeowners Association had rules for everything. It was wealthy, quiet, and until that morning, almost entirely white. Just after 9 o'clock, a moving truck rumbled to a stop at 847 Maple Drive. From a sleek sedan behind it stepped Patricia Williams and her 8-year-old daughter, Jasmine. At 42, Patricia had worked her entire life for this moment. She had grown up on the city's east side, where gunshots were a nightly soundtrack. She'd put herself through college with 3 jobs, attended law school while pregnant with Jasmine, and built a career in public service with a brilliance that could not be ignored. 8 months earlier, she had won the mayoral election, a single mother who had overcome poverty to reach the city's highest office. Closing on the house in Riverside Heights felt like redemption. It was a place where Jasmine could finally just be a kid. Jasmine, whose every movement radiated pure, uncomplicated joy, had her mother's warm brown eyes and a smile that could light up a room. She loved sidewalk chalk and stuffed animals, her favorite being a purple elephant named Sir Trunksworth, a knight who protected the kingdom of her bedroom. That Saturday morning, she stood in the driveway, clutching Sir Trunksworth to her chest, her eyes wide with wonder. Patricia watched her daughter race up the front steps and allowed herself a moment of pure happiness. She had done it. She had given her child a better life. She had no idea that across the street someone was watching, someone who had already decided that Patricia and Jasmine Williams did not belong. Catherine Blake stood at her living room window, her fingers gripping the curtain, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. At 42, Catherine had made Riverside Heights her entire identity. A 15-year resident and 7-year president of the Homeowners Association, she knew every rule, every regulation, every unwritten expectation. She watched the movers unload furniture. She watched Patricia Williams laugh with them. She watched little Jasmine dance on the lawn, twirling in circles with her purple elephant. "New neighbors," her husband David said, coming up behind her with coffee. "Looks like they have a daughter around Emma's age." Catherine's voice was tight. "Did you see the size of that truck? I hope they're not planning to cram that house full of furniture. There are aesthetic standards." David glanced at his wife, a flicker of unease on his face. But he said nothing. He had learned that when Catherine's voice took on that tone, it was best to stay quiet. By afternoon, Jasmine came running downstairs. "Mama, can I draw on the driveway with my chalk?" "Of course, baby," Patricia said, her heart swelling. "Stay where I can see you from the window." For the next hour, Jasmine created a masterpiece of flowers, rainbows, and a stick-figure family. She drew Sir Trunksworth with a crown and a castle. Across the street, Catherine watched, her hands clenching into fists. Sidewalk chalk all over a pristine driveway. It looked messy. It looked to Catherine like the beginning of the end. She decided to establish boundaries. Right now, on day one. She crossed the street and stood at the edge of the Williams driveway, looking down at the girl. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. Jasmine scrambled to her feet, polite as she'd been taught. "Hi, I'm Jasmine. We just moved in. Look, I'm drawing a butterfly. Do you like butterflies?" Catherine did not smile. "This is quite a mess you've made." Jasmine's smile faltered. "It's just chalk. Mama said it's okay. It washes off." "When it rains," Catherine repeated with disdain. "And until then, we all have to look at this vandalism." Vandalism. The word hung in the air like a poison. Jasmine didn't fully understand it, but she understood the tone. Her smile vanished. I'm sorry," she stammered. "In this neighborhood, we have standards," Catherine said, crossing her arms. "Perhaps wherever you came from, this sort of thing was acceptable. But here, we maintain our properties." There it was. Wherever you came from. Jasmine was only 8, but she understood. The problem wasn't the chalk. The problem was her. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'll clean it up," she whispered. "See that you do," Catherine said. "And in the future, find more appropriate activities." "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Patricia was standing on the front porch, and the look on her face gave Catherine pause. She walked down the steps, positioning herself between her trembling daughter and the other woman. "I'm Patricia Williams," she said, her voice polite but firm. "And you are?" "Catherine Blake, president of the Riverside Heights Homeowners Association. I was just explaining our community standards." "Community standards?" Patricia repeated slowly. "Regarding sidewalk chalk? On our own driveway?" "Everything in Riverside Heights is regulated," Catherine said. "It's what makes it a desirable place to live. I'd think you'd want to fit in." Patricia felt Jasmine press closer against her leg. "Let me be very clear, Ms. Blake. My daughter is welcome to draw on our driveway whenever she wants. If the HOA has an official policy stating otherwise, feel free to send me the documentation. I'll have my legal team review it." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Your legal team?" "Yes. I'm the mayor of this city, Ms. Blake. I've spent my career fighting discriminatory policies disguised as community standards. So if you have a legitimate concern, put it in writing. Otherwise, I suggest you let my 8-year-old daughter draw butterflies in peace." The color drained from Catherine's face. The mayor. This was the black woman who had pushed through those anti-discrimination ordinances. "I was simply welcoming you," she said stiffly. "By telling my daughter her art is vandalism? I heard every word, Ms. Blake. Let's not pretend this was about chalk." Caught, Catherine turned and walked back across the street, her back rigid with indignation. But she wasn't defeated. She was planning. That night, after Jasmine was asleep, Patricia stood at her bedroom window and texted her chief of staff. "Heads up, new neighbor might be a problem. Catherine Blake, HOA president. Keep an eye out for complaints." Looking across the street, she saw a silhouette in a lit upstairs window. Catherine was standing there looking right back at her. A war had begun, and Catherine Blake did not lose wars. The harassment that followed was relentless. On Monday, an official HOA violation notice was taped to their door. Jasmine's pink bicycle, left leaning against the garage, constituted improper storage of recreational equipment. On Tuesday, Catherine stood at the property line, demanding they power wash Jasmine's new hopscotch board. "It makes the neighborhood look trashy," she snapped. "If you can't control your child, maybe you shouldn't have moved here. Maybe where you people come from, this is acceptable. but not here. Wednesday was worse. Jasmine was playing hopscotch, her small feet landing 2 feet from the property line, when Catherine exploded from her house. "Get away from my property," she screamed, her face red with rage. "Don't you dare step on my grass." Jasmine froze, pale with fear. She was nowhere near the grass. Neighbors emerged onto their porches, but no one intervened. They just watched. Patricia pulled her sobbing daughter inside. That night, Jasmine woke up screaming from a nightmare about the angry neighbor lady chasing her. On Thursday, Jasmine got home from school before her mother and went to get the mail. As she stood at the end of her driveway, a police car pulled up. "Hey there, sweetheart," an officer said, his hand resting near his belt. "Do you live around here?" Jasmine's heart pounded. "Yes, sir, right there." "We got a call about a suspicious child wandering the neighborhood," the other officer said. Suspicious. The word terrified her. Just then, Patricia's car sped up the street. She jumped out, her face a mask of fear and fury. "That's my daughter. What's going on?" The officers, recognizing the mayor, immediately became apologetic. "Mayor Williams, we received a call from a Catherine Blake across the street. She said a child she didn't recognize was looking into mailboxes." Patricia looked across the street. Catherine was in her window, watching, her expression defiant. After the officers left, Patricia marched to Catherine's door. Catherine answered with a smug smile. "You called the police on my 8-year-old daughter," Patricia said, her voice shaking with rage. "I saw a child I didn't recognize acting suspiciously," Catherine replied smoothly. "I was being vigilant." "You are terrorizing my daughter, and I'm telling you right now, it stops today." Catherine's smile widened. "I'm simply maintaining community standards. If you have a problem with that, you can file a complaint with the HOA board." "Oh, wait," Catherine sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "You already did. And they sided with me because I'm protecting property values and you're bringing them down." Patricia wanted to say more. She wanted to unleash a scream that could crack the foundations of Catherine's perfect house, but she knew it wouldn't help. She was the mayor. The title was a shield, but it was also a cage. She had to handle this the right way. Through channels. Through documentation and official complaints. She went home and filed a police report for harassment. She filed a formal complaint with the city's Fair Housing Office. She documented everything, her phone becoming a repository of Catherine's malice. Crisp photos of HOA notices, meticulously recorded dates and times of every single incident. But Catherine was a master of the paper trail. She filed complaints of her own, a deluge of them. She sent the HOA board photos of Jasmine's little pink bike, of the chalk drawings on the sidewalk, of Jasmine playing a few inches too close to the invisible property line. She wrote detailed, dramatic reports about noise violations and aesthetic concerns. She was building a fortress of lies, brick by meticulous brick, painting the Williams family as problem residents. And the HOA board, composed mostly of Catherine's longtime friends, nodded in agreement and sided with her on every single issue. By Friday, less than a week after they had moved in, Jasmine was afraid to go outside. She would press her small face against the living room window, her breath fogging the glass, scanning the street like a soldier on watch. Only when Catherine's house was still and silent would she dare to even step onto the porch. The joyful, carefree little girl who had danced in the driveway on moving day was gone. In her place was an anxious, withdrawn child who walked on tiptoes. Patricia watched her daughter's inner light dimming, flicker by painful flicker, and felt a profound, suffocating powerlessness. She was the mayor of an entire city, a woman who commanded respect and wielded authority, but she couldn't protect her own child from a racist neighbor with too much time and an endless supply of hate. Other neighbors noticed. 2 doors down, Marcus Chen saw it all unfold from his home office window, a silent, daily horror movie. Across the street, Sophia Martinez watched Catherine's obsessive surveillance with a knot of concern tightening in her stomach. The elderly Johnsons next door heard Catherine screaming at Jasmine one afternoon and were horrified. But nobody said anything. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to become Catherine's next target. And so, they stayed silent, their curtains twitching, and watched as an 8-year-old child was systematically terrorized in her own front yard. On Saturday morning, Patricia sat Jasmine down for a conversation that felt heavier than any political negotiation. "Baby, I know this week has been hard. I know Ms. Blake has been mean to you." Jasmine just nodded, clutching her stuffed elephant, Sir Trunksworth, so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mama, why does she hate me? I didn't do anything bad." The question shattered Patricia's heart into a million pieces. "You didn't do anything bad, sweetheart. Not one single thing. Ms. Blake is the one with the problem, not you." "Then why won't she leave me alone?" Patricia had no good answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that some people's hatred is a sickness, so deep and irrational that it latches onto innocent children? How do you tell your beautiful daughter that the color of her skin makes some people uncomfortable, angry, even violent? "I'm working on making it stop," Patricia said, the words feeling hollow even to her own ears. "I promise you, I'm going to fix this." But that weekend, Catherine was already planning her next move. She sat at her computer, the rhythmic clack of the keys a sound of grim determination. More complaints, more photos, building her case. She decided that since the subtle harassment wasn't working, it was time to escalate. She started researching Patricia's schedule, noting when the mayor left for work and when she returned. She noted when Jasmine was home with babysitters. She documented every visitor, every delivery, every car that pulled into the Williams driveway. Her husband David walked into her office and stopped cold. The walls were covered in photos, a chaotic web of surveillance connected by strings, like something out of a detective film. Files were spread across her desk. "Catherine, what is this? What are you doing?" he asked, genuine concern softening his voice. "Protecting our neighborhood," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Someone has to. They're a woman and her daughter, Catherine. They're not hurting anyone." She finally looked at him, and the cold intensity in her eyes made him take an involuntary step back. "They're changing everything. Property values will plummet. The neighborhood will deteriorate. We've worked too hard, for too long to let that happen." "Or maybe," David said quietly, the words hanging in the air between them, "you just can't stand that a black family moved in across the street." Catherine's eyes went glacial. "Get out of my office." David left, but a seed of terrible doubt had been planted. This wasn't about property values. This was an obsession. His wife was becoming unhinged. He started paying closer attention, and what he saw began to terrify him. By Sunday evening, Jasmine refused to go outside at all. She sat in her room drawing, but even her art had turned dark. The rainbows and butterflies were gone, replaced by crooked houses with angry faces peering from the windows. She drew herself as a tiny, stick-figure girl surrounded by giant, shadowy monsters. Patricia looked at those drawings and felt a cold dread creep into her bones. Something had to give. She couldn't let Catherine Blake destroy her daughter's childhood. But what Patricia didn't know was that Catherine was about to do something so extreme, so unforgivable, that it would change all of their lives forever. The harassment was about to become something much, much worse. Something that would land an 8-year-old child in the hospital, fighting for her life. Monday afternoon arrived with an oppressive, suffocating heat. The kind of August day where the air itself shimmered above the pavement. Jasmine, feeling a small spark of her old self, dragged a folding table onto the front lawn. She carefully arranged her stuffed animals for a tea party. Sir Trunksworth, as always, sat at the head of the table. Princess Sparkle, Mr. Whiskers, and a floppy-eared bunny named Hopper filled the other seats. She poured imaginary tea from her plastic teapot, offering imaginary cookies with a solemn grace. For a moment, she was safe again. Patricia was at an urgent city council budget meeting, but she'd hired Maya Rodriguez, a bright college student, to babysit. Maya sat on the porch, textbook open on her lap, keeping a watchful eye on Jasmine. Across the street, Catherine watched from her window, her jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Toys. A table. Clutter. It looked messy. It violated HOA standards. 2 weeks of her efforts, and they were still here, still defying her. She grabbed her phone and marched across the street, a woman on a holy mission. Jasmine saw her coming, and the small, hopeful smile on her face vanished. She stood up, instinctively moving closer to the house, her hand reaching for the comforting plush of Sir Trunksworth. "What is this?" Catherine demanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. "This is unacceptable. This is unsightly clutter. This violates HOA regulations. Clean this up immediately." "I'm just playing," Jasmine whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't care what you're doing. This neighborhood has rules. Rules your mother apparently can't be bothered to teach you." Jasmine's face crumpled. Quiet tears began to stream down her cheeks as she tried to gather her friends with shaking hands. Seeing the tears, Catherine's anger only intensified. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. You're not hurt. You're just crying for attention. Typical." Hearing the raised voice, Maya shot to her feet and ran down the porch steps, placing herself between Catherine and the terrified child. "Hey, what's going on here?" Catherine turned her rage on Maya. "And who are you? Is Patricia Williams employing unauthorized help? Are you even legal?" Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. "Excuse me? I'm her babysitter, and you need to step back from this child right now." "I need to step back? This is my neighborhood. I am the HOA president. I have every right to enforce the regulations." Jasmine was openly sobbing now, clutching Sir Trunksworth like a life raft. Maya took her hand. "Come on, sweetie, let's go inside." She started guiding Jasmine toward the house, but Catherine followed them, her voice rising with every step. "Don't you walk away from me. You need to show me identification. I need to verify you're authorized to be here." Maya got Jasmine through the front door and quickly shut it, but Catherine followed them right onto the porch and began pounding on it with her fist. Bang, bang, bang. The wood shuddered under the force of her blows. Inside, Jasmine was hysterical, hiding behind Maya, her small body racked with sobs. An adult was screaming, trying to break down their door, and her mama wasn't there. With trembling fingers, Maya pulled out her phone. She had been given a number for Patricia's security detail, for emergencies only. This was an emergency. "She's outside, pounding on the door," Maya choked into the phone. "She followed us from the yard. Jasmine is terrified. Please, we need help." Outside, neighbors finally started to emerge from their homes. Marcus Chen came out first, followed by Sophia Martinez and the Johnsons. They watched, stunned, as Catherine hammered on the door like a woman possessed. "Catherine, stop. You need to calm down," Marcus called out. Catherine whirled around, her face a mask of crimson fury. "Stay out of this, Marcus. I'm enforcing HOA regulations." "You're terrorizing a child," Sophia shouted from her own lawn. "That little girl is 8 years old. She needs to learn the rules. They don't belong here." There it was, the truth, finally spoken aloud, ugly and undeniable. "They don't belong here." Marcus raised his phone and started recording. Sophia did the same. They had stayed silent for 2 weeks, but this was a line that could not be uncrossed. Catherine saw the phones and seemed to lose what little control she had left. "Are you recording me? I'm the victim here. I'm protecting our neighborhood." Inside, Jasmine clung to Maya, sobbing uncontrollably. The angry neighbor lady was right outside their door, screaming. Finally, Catherine stepped back, though she didn't leave, standing on the porch with her arms crossed, breathing heavily. Just then, David Blake came running from their house. When he saw his wife on the Williams porch, his face went pale. "Catherine, come home right now." "Don't you tell me what to do. You don't care about protecting what we've built here." The wail of police sirens cut through the air, growing closer. Patricia's black SUV came speeding around the corner, followed by 2 police cruisers. She jumped out before the car had even come to a full stop. "Where is my daughter?" she roared, the voice not of a mayor, but of a mother bear. Catherine backed away from the door, a flicker of awareness finally dawning on her face. "I was just enforcing HOA rules." Patricia ran to her front door. "Maya, it's me." The door flew open, and Maya practically fell into her arms. "She followed us. She wouldn't stop. She's terrified." Patricia found her daughter curled into a tight ball on the living room floor, sobbing and clutching Sir Trunksworth. Patricia dropped to her knees and pulled Jasmine into her arms, rocking her gently. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here. You're safe now." Outside, police officers were approaching Catherine. Marcus stepped forward, his phone still held high. "Officers, I have video of everything." She chased them to the door. She pounded on it for 5 minutes, screaming. She refused to leave. Sophia held up her phone. "I have video as well. That woman has been harassing this family since the day they moved in. This isn't about toys. This is about racism." One officer glanced at the scattered stuffed animals and the little plastic tea set, then looked at Catherine, then back at the door. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us to answer some questions." "Questions? I'm the victim here. They're violating HOA regulations." Patricia emerged from the house, her face a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Officers, I want to press charges. That woman terrorized my 8-year-old daughter. She chased my babysitter to my front door and pounded on it while screaming. My daughter is traumatized. This is harassment. Catherine's mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. You have no authority to terrorize children, Patricia said, her voice dangerously low. You have no authority to chase people to their homes, and now you are going to learn that your position doesn't protect you from consequences. The police took Catherine's information as other neighbors approached Patricia, shamefaced, apologizing for their silence, offering to testify. That night, Patricia held Jasmine as she finally drifted off to a fitful sleep, her face puffy from crying. "Mama, can we move?" Jasmine whispered into the dark. "I don't like it here anymore." Patricia's heart broke all over again. "Baby, we can't let mean people chase us out of our home. But she hates me so much." Patricia held her daughter tighter and prayed that this would be the end of it, that Catherine Blake would finally leave them alone. But Catherine wasn't done. In her mind, she was the wronged party, the righteous defender of her community, and she was going to prove it, even if it meant destroying a child to do so. The next day, Tuesday, dawned bright and clear, a cruel parody of peace. Patricia left early for an emergency city council meeting. Maya arrived at 8. Jasmine spent the morning inside coloring, but around 10 o'clock she looked out the window at the small flower garden she and her mama had planted. The sunflowers looked thirsty. "Maya, can I go water my flowers?" Maya looked up from her laptop. "Of course, sweetie, just stay in the front yard where I can see you, okay?" Jasmine nodded and grabbed her watering can. It was child-sized, bright yellow with painted daisies on the side. Her grandmother had given it to her, telling her that growing things was like growing dreams. You had to tend to them carefully. She went outside and knelt beside her sunflowers. They were only a foot tall, but she treated them with the utmost seriousness, pouring water gently at their base. "You're doing so good," she whispered to them. "You're going to be so tall and pretty." Across the street, Catherine stood at her window. She had been there all morning, waiting. When she saw Jasmine come outside with that watering can, something inside her snapped. After the police, after the neighbors recording her, after her own husband's look of disgust, she felt cornered and humiliated. And in her twisted mind, it was all because of that child who refused to stay inside, who kept acting like she belonged. Catherine marched out her front door, her hands balled into fists. Jasmine saw her coming and froze, the little yellow can trembling in her hands. "What are you doing?" Catherine shouted from across the street. "Are you wasting water? Do you have any idea what water costs? Do you even have a permit for that garden?" Jasmine stood up, backing away slowly. "I'm just watering my flowers. Mama said I could." "There are HOA landscaping regulations." Catherine was crossing the street now, moving with a frightening speed. "You can't just plant whatever you want, and watering in the middle of the day, that's the most inefficient time. You're wasting resources." "I'm sorry, I didn't know," Jasmine stammered, still backing toward the safety of her front door. "I'll go inside." "No. You need to understand that there are rules here. Rules you people seem to think don't apply to you." Catherine reached out and grabbed the watering can, trying to wrench it from Jasmine's hands. "No!" Jasmine cried out, holding on tight. "That's mine! My grandma gave it to me!" "Let go of it." "No, please. It's from my grandma." Catherine pulled harder, her face contorted with a rage completely disproportionate to the situation. It was a tug of war over a child's toy, and Jasmine, crying, pulled back with all her might. Then Catherine shoved. She put her hand flat on Jasmine's small chest and shoved. Hard. Jasmine was 8 years old, barely 60 pounds. The force sent her stumbling backward. Her feet tangled. She fell and her head hit the concrete driveway with a sickening crack that seemed to echo across the unnaturally quiet street. The little yellow watering can clattered beside her, its contents spilling across the concrete. But Jasmine didn't move. She didn't cry out. She didn't make a sound. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Catherine stood frozen, staring down at the small, motionless body. A dark pool of blood began to spread out from beneath Jasmine's head, staining the gray concrete. Her eyes were closed. Her arms lay at odd angles. She wasn't moving. "Oh God," Catherine whispered, the words catching in her throat. "Oh God, oh God." Inside the house, Maya heard the thud. It was a sound that made her blood run cold. She ran to the window and saw it all. Jasmine on the driveway, the spreading blood, Catherine standing over her like a grim statue. Maya screamed, a raw, piercing sound of pure terror. She ran outside faster than she had ever moved in her life. Jasmine! Jasmine! Across the street, Marcus Chen had seen everything. The confrontation, the struggle over the watering can, the shove. He was already dialing 911 as he sprinted out his front door. I need an ambulance. A child is unconscious, head injury, bleeding, 847 Maple Drive. Maya reached Jasmine and dropped to her knees. Baby, can you hear me? Jasmine, please, wake up. Her hands hovered over the small body, terrified to touch her. There was so much blood. Catherine took a step back, then another, her face a ghostly white. She tripped. She tripped. I didn't mean... She pulled away and tripped. Marcus reached them, his phone pressed between his ear and shoulder as he felt for a pulse in Jasmine's neck. She's breathing. Pulse is weak. Stay with me, sweetheart. Help is coming. The 911 operator's voice crackled through the phone's speaker. Is the child conscious? No, she's unconscious. Significant head trauma. Blood is pooling. She's 8 years old. Doors flew open up and down the street. Sophia Martinez, the Johnsons, David Blake, they all ran toward the scene. Sophia pulled out her phone and aimed it directly at Catherine. You pushed her. I saw you push that baby. Catherine shook her head violently. No, she tripped. She pulled away from me and she tripped. I didn't push her. You're lying, Sophia screamed, her voice cracking. We all saw you. Marcus looked up from Jasmine's still form, his face hard as granite. I watched the whole thing from my window. You shoved her. A grown woman shoved an 8-year-old child. David Blake stood behind his wife, his face gray with horror. Catherine, what did you do? What did you do? Catherine spun to face him, her eyes wild. I didn't do anything. She wouldn't let go of the watering can. She was being defiant. I just... But she couldn't finish. There was no way to finish. Jasmine lay unconscious, her small body frighteningly still. Blood soaked into her yellow t-shirt with the butterflies on it. The watering can her grandmother had given her lay on its side, its spilled water mixing with the blood on the concrete. Maya was sobbing, holding Jasmine's limp hand, her voice a desperate, broken prayer. Please, Jasmine, please, your mama's coming, just please wake up. Just hold on, baby, please, hold on. The words were a desperate prayer whispered over the small, still form on the concrete. Sirens, a distant cry at first, were now clawing their way closer. Catherine Blake looked up, her world tilting on its axis. Neighbors, once a gallery of familiar faces, now formed a semicircle of judgment, their expressions a sickening blend of horror and disgust. Phones were held aloft, their small, dark lenses recording her ruin. Her gaze found Marcus, who had seen it all. It found the little girl, a splash of vibrant life now bleeding onto the gray pavement. And in that moment, she understood. Her life had just ended. I need to call my lawyer, she breathed, the words barely audible. Marcus's voice was like ice. You need to pray that child lives, because if she doesn't, you're not just facing assault, you're facing murder. The word hung in the air, a final, damning verdict. Murder. Catherine's legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the manicured grass, a violent tremor seizing her entire body. An ambulance screamed around the corner, its arrival a flash of red and white, closely followed by the stark blue of police cruisers. Paramedics vaulted from the vehicle, their movements a blur of controlled urgency as they rushed to Jasmine. They moved Maya, who was still whispering to her sister, aside with a firm but gentle touch. What happened? A paramedic asked, his eyes already assessing the devastating injury. She was pushed, Marcus said, his voice surprisingly steady despite his trembling hands. Fell backward, head struck the concrete, unconscious for about 3 minutes. Significant blood loss. The medical team worked with grim efficiency, stabilizing Jasmine's neck, checking her vitals, their faces stoic masks that couldn't quite hide the severity of the situation. Possible skull fracture, significant trauma. We need to transport immediately. They lifted Jasmine's small body onto a stretcher, making her look even more fragile. Her favorite stuffed elephant, Sir Trunksworth, lay abandoned by the sunflowers she had been so carefully watering just moments before. Maya scooped it up, clutching it to her chest as she watched them load her sister into the back of the ambulance. Her own hands shaking, Maya pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the mayor, right now." Patricia Williams answered on the first ring. "Maya, what is it? What's wrong?" "You have to come home. Now," Maya sobbed. "It's Jasmine, Catherine Blake." She pushed her. Jasmine hit her head. She's not waking up. There's so much blood. They're taking her to the hospital. You need to come now. Patricia didn't remember dropping the phone. She didn't remember the feeling of running from the council chambers or the frantic race of her security detail, lights and sirens carving a path through the city. All she remembered was a single, paralyzing thought that repeated itself like a broken record. My baby is hurt. Someone hurt my baby. I might lose my daughter. Back on Maple Drive, the police had formed a perimeter around Catherine. She sat on the grass, a spectator to the destruction of her own life, watching the ambulance disappear down the street. "Ma'am, we need you to stand up," an officer said, his tone professional but firm. "We have multiple witnesses who state you pushed the child." "She tripped," Catherine whispered, the lie flimsy and pathetic even to her own ears. "She just tripped." "That's not what we're hearing, ma'am. Please come with us." As Catherine looked up at the officer, the full weight of reality crashed down upon her. She had hurt a child. She had shoved an 8-year-old girl with such force that her head had cracked open on the concrete, and the entire world had been watching. Tears began to stream down her face, not tears of remorse, but of pure, unadulterated self-pity, tears for her ruined life. "I didn't mean to," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for this to happen." But she had. She had meant to grab the watering can. She had meant to confront the child. She had meant to put her hands on Jasmine and push. She just hadn't meant to get caught. And now, as a convoy of black SUVs screeched around the corner, as Mayor Patricia Williams arrived to find her daughter's blood staining the sidewalk, Catherine Blake knew. There would be no escape, no explanation, no forgiveness. Justice was here, and it had come for her. Patricia leaped from her vehicle before it came to a complete stop, her eyes wild with panic. "Where is my daughter?" A paramedic, closing the ambulance doors, turned to her. "Mayor Williams, we're transporting her now. Severe head trauma. We have to go." Patricia ran, catching a glimpse of her daughter inside. Jasmine lay on the stretcher, so pale and small, a tangle of tubes and wires attached to her tiny body. Patricia's world fractured. Her knees gave out and she collapsed beside the gurney, her carefully constructed composure shattering into a million pieces. "Jasmine, baby, Mama's here," she cried, grabbing her daughter's limp hand. "Please wake up. Please, God, let her be okay." The paramedic gently touched her shoulder. "Ma'am, we need to go." Patricia climbed into the ambulance without a second thought, her grip on Jasmine's hand unbreakable. As the doors closed and the sirens began to wail again, she watched her neighborhood recede, a place that was no longer a sanctuary but a crime scene. Meanwhile, the evidence against Catherine was mounting with sickening speed. Marcus Chen stepped forward. "Officer," he said, holding up his phone, "my doorbell camera caught everything." He played the footage. The video was clear and damning. Catherine, her face a mask of rage, marching across the lawn, Jasmine backing away in fear, the grab for the watering can. And then, the shove. A sudden, violent act that sent the child flying backward. The sickening crack of her head hitting the concrete. The officer's jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said to Catherine, his voice now devoid of any warmth, "this video shows you assaulting a minor." More neighbors came forward, a torrent of voices finally unleashed. Sophia Martinez, tears streaming down her face, spoke of false CPS reports that nearly destroyed her family. An elderly black couple recounted Catherine's endless complaints about their visiting grandchildren. Another family described her following their 6-year-old son, taking pictures of him as he rode his bike. A pattern emerged, a chilling chronicle of harassment targeting every family of color on the block. Then David Blake, Catherine's husband, stepped out of the shadows, his face a gray mask of shame. "I've been documenting her behavior for months," he said, his voice cracking. "She became obsessed when the Williams family moved in." He showed the police pictures from inside their home office. Walls covered with photos of Patricia and Jasmine, notes on their schedules, files of complaints. It was the lair of a stalker. I should have stopped her, David choked out. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. My wife, she needs to face what she's done. Catherine stared at him, betrayed. David, you can't. I'm your wife. You attacked a child, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Because you decided she didn't belong. I will not defend that. An officer moved toward Catherine, handcuffs at the ready. Catherine Blake, you are under arrest for assault and battery on a minor causing great bodily harm. No, she screamed. I was defending my neighborhood. They're the ones who don't belong here. The mask was off. The hatred she'd cloaked in HOA regulations and property values was finally laid bare. As they placed her in the back of a squad car, the neighbors watched in silence. The reign of terror was over. But it was a hollow victory. A little girl was fighting for her life, and no one knew if she would win. At the hospital, Patricia sat in a sterile waiting room, her clothes stained with her daughter's blood, praying. Hours crawled by. Finally, a doctor appeared. Mayor Williams, your daughter has a severe concussion, a skull fracture, and significant swelling on her brain. She's stable, but the next few hours are critical. Jasmine lay in a pediatric ICU bed, a tiny figure lost in a sea of white sheets and beeping machines. Patricia took her hand and waited. For 6 hours, she watched her daughter breathe, begging the universe not to take her. And then, a flutter. Jasmine's eyelids opened. She looked around, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Mama? She whispered. Is the mean lady going to hurt me again? Patricia's heart didn't just break. It shattered. She carefully climbed onto the bed, gathering her daughter into her arms. No, baby, never. She's never going to hurt you again. You're safe now. I promise. While Jasmine fought for her life, her community finally woke up. The HOA board held an emergency meeting where Marcus Chen presented years of evidence and a dozen harrowing testimonies. One by one, the board members, shamed by their complicity, resigned. The HOA dissolved. Catherine Blake was denied bail. Prosecutors, armed with video evidence and a mountain of testimony, charged her with felony child abuse. David Blake filed for divorce. 5 days later, Patricia Williams stood at a podium at City Hall. My daughter is 8 years old, she said, her voice shaking but clear. She loves sidewalk chalk and stuffed animals. A neighbor attacked her because she couldn't stand seeing a black family in her neighborhood. I am the mayor of this city. I have security and resources. And I still couldn't protect my daughter from racist violence. Think about what that means for every other family. She looked straight into the cameras, her eyes burning with a righteous fire. That should terrify all of us. Jasmine spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars ran deep. When she finally came home, the neighborhood was waiting. Flowers bloomed in every yard. A banner stretched across the street. We love you, Jasmine. As Patricia drove down the block, families lined the sidewalks, clapping. They had failed to protect her once. They would not fail her again. The trial, 6 months later, was a formality. The video, the testimonies, her own husband's account. The evidence was irrefutable. The jury returned a guilty verdict in 3 hours. The judge looked at Catherine with undisguised contempt. You targeted a child because of her race. You showed no remorse, only self-pity. You are a danger to society. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. In the year that followed, Jasmine worked hard in therapy. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days were filled with sunshine and sidewalk chalk. Others were clouded by nightmares she couldn't escape. But slowly, she was learning to be a child again. Patricia passed new legislation, Jasmine's Law, banning discriminatory HOA practices and creating new protections for children. The neighborhood of Riverside Heights transformed. New families moved in, drawn by the story of a community that had faced its own ugliness and chosen to change. 1 year after the attack, Jasmine planted a new garden. Patricia knelt beside her in the dirt along with Marcus, Sophia, and other neighbors. They planted seeds of hope together. That summer, the sunflowers grew taller than ever before. Jasmine stood beneath them, her face turned up to the sun, and smiled a real, genuine smile. Patricia watched from the porch as her daughter ran through the sprinklers, her laughter echoing through the late afternoon air. The grief for her stolen innocence was still there, a shadow in the corner of her heart. but it was mingled with pride in her daughter's resilience and a fierce, unyielding hope. They had won something precious. They had won the right to belong, the right to be safe, the right to be home, and that was a victory worth fighting for.